Welcome to the Courage to Live podcast. My name is Josh Bitsko, and I'm a retired police captain, 24 years of experience out of Las Vegas. Currently, I travel the country and I teach people about courage, resilience, and leadership. Joined by my wife and co-host, Jenna.
Hi.
And in today's podcast, we are going to talk about PTSD and kind of give an overview for, it's really good information for everybody, but obviously we're going to talk about a lot about first responders and, what they deal with. And if you are a first responder, kind of how to identify when to reach out for help as far as specifically for PTSD and what it looks like and how it presents. But it is President's Day just passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured we can talk about who your favorite president is. Or do you want me to start?
Yeah, I would love for you to start.
Yeah.
I hate this question.
My favorite president is easily Abraham Lincoln. You want to know why?
Yes.
Because he is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Because he was a very experienced grappler and wrestler. Mm-hmm. And I think he was 90-0, didn't lose ever. Imagine wrestling him, because he was a giant, especially for the time. With him wearing that hat, even look bigger.
Yeah.
It'd be super intimidating.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there was jujitsu at the time. But, there wasn't. But
it was I don't know.
But there's wrestling, catch wrestling, and all that. I think it'd be fun to roll with Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was my favorite president, so.
Well, I stole yours.
You stole my thunder.
You should have gone first.
I guess I should have. But, I mean, he did end slavery, so.
Well, that too, but I was more talking about the wrestling stuff.
Yeah, I know.
So he's your favorite president too? Didn't we just become best friends?
I think we did.
Yeah. So PTSD, obviously, it is a topic near and dear to my heart because it is something that I've been dealing with for a while now. I want to put out this caveat, though. Neither Jenna and I are doctors. So do not take anything that we say as medical advice or anything I don't want you to take it as, okay, now I know everything and I'm good. That's not the point of this podcast. Kind of give a little bit of our experience, my experience specifically with it, give you an idea of what it is. And maybe if you have some of the same experiences that you can, maybe an indicator that you can reach out and get help.
Yes. I think we wanted to start by just kind of defining. Everybody, I think, has a broad understanding of what PTSD is, but maybe just kind of giving a definition of what it is, what it looks like for first responders, etc.
Yeah. And again, if you're looking for the medical definition, you can Google that. You can get all that. We have the
stands for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes. But specifically, really what it is your nervous system getting stuck after any kind of traumatic event. And it really is kind of a moving goalpost for people of what can cause that and what can, create that. Some people can experience trauma and not develop PTSD. Just because you experience something bad doesn't mean you're automatically going to develop PTSD. But that is the starting point for if you do develop it. And then there's also, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. In a lot of circles, they'd rather say post-traumatic stress injury. They're saying it's an injury and not a disorder, because it is the trauma, something very serious, something very scary, life-threatening. It really just kind of burns into your brain.
Yeah, your body is stuck in survival mode.
And then things can trigger it and make it worse. And, it really can have, there's a sliding scale on how bad people have it and how much it can affect you. There are people on the extreme end, especially when you're looking at combat veterans, that it is just takes over their life. And then there are at the other end where, maybe you have a panic attack or something because something triggers that or reminds you of the incident, or it just comes up.
Right.
And I think that's why it is so difficult to identify or even diagnose at times, because it can look a little different for everybody.
Well, like you said, it can happen to anyone, and it can come from one big life-altering event or many. But for first responders, for people in active combat in the military, that PTSD is most likely coming. It can come from one big, huge traumatic call, but it also can come from critical incidents and just from seeing hard things stack over time. And there's coming from working with statistics for my entire career, I have seen so many different statistics on this, and it's going around Instagram right now that, normal people experience 1 to 2 critical incidents in their lifetime. First responders, I have seen the statistics go from experience 400 to 800. I've seen 600 to 900. So just know that I don't think anybody really has an actual accurate picture, but it is, that's their job, is responding to people's worst nightmares, right? So you have that trauma that compounds over time, and those seeing death and horror and grief and pain and seeing that over and over and over and over again compounds.
Well, yeah, I mean, even just to put it into perspective for our non-first responder listeners, just even seeing a dead body, like, and I'm not saying that is overly traumatic for a police officer that's done it their whole career, or medical or fire department, but because I couldn't tell you all the ones I've seen. But if you think of it outside of that community, how many times have you seen a dead body? Maybe at a viewing at a funeral, maybe driving past a car accident. And then, there, of course, there's people experience loss, finding a loved one deceased and all of that, or sitting with them in the hospital. But as law enforcement, I mean, I couldn't even tell you all the ones that I'd seen. Now, I did a couple of years in our child abuse neglect section, and I was, responding to deceased children several times a week for 2 years. So that might be a little bit on the extreme end, but you see it becomes almost normalized to you. But I still think no matter how much you say it doesn't, it's not natural to see that much, and it has an impact on you. Again, it doesn't mean you're going to be diagnosed with PTSD or a PTSI, but it definitely will have an impact and contribute. And what you're talking about is the cumulative nature of being in law enforcement. And I can tell you, you have, shifts and weeks where it is, you go from 0 to 100, back down to 0, back up to 100, and you're just training your body to experience that fight or flight response and experience that adrenaline dump and that dump of cortisol, and it becomes normalized to you.
Well, and I think too, it can come from all of that, and it can also, remember, come from moral injury. And when I say moral injury, I mean going through a traumatic experience and feeling like leadership or the agency you work for didn't or doesn't have your back, right?
Well, yeah, I show a video that in my class that I love, and I'll put it in the description of this podcast, the link to it. They do a great job talking about specifically PTSD and how it often affects first responders. And I'm going to try and say it here, and I'm not going to say it as eloquently as they do, but you picture a dam between your first responder and the traumatic things that they see. The dam does a really good job of stopping that trauma from impacting them, right? Because I think there's naturally people that get into this line of work generally know what to expect, and they have put up this dam to not let them bother. And every once in a while, something squeaks through. But it just keeps happening. Maybe another crack in that dam and another traumatic thing sneaks through and impacts you, but it's not like this life-altering thing. And how they specifically describe it is, we often think that the dam overflows, your cup runs over, all of these things, and that's when PTSD gets you. But they describe like this sledgehammer that comes down on the dam, shattering it, and then all of that trauma gets through. And they say that sledgehammer can maybe be a big incident, but more often than not, it's that moral injury. It's that my department didn't have my back.
We have a friend who was involved in a officer-involved shooting, and it was a good shoot. As
It was justified.
Justified. I said that really uneloquently. It was justified. But the department that he worked for at the time came out and they spoke out against him, that he made a terrible choice, that they just really, and they said this to the media, and they really went after this officer.
It was before the investigation was done.
Correct. And that completely changed who he was as a human being.
Yeah.
That was the straw that broke the camel's back, because he was doing his job and he did not have the department's back. And like Josh said, it ended up being justified, and he was fine and returned back, fine as in kept his job and returned back to work. But not only did he have to kill somebody, which is a whole thing in and of itself to have to deal with, he also had to go through the department not having his back. And that really truly broke the dam for him.
Yeah. But I've seen that on repeat.
Yeah.
Is all of that floods through, and not only, like you said, did he have to take somebody's life, but then he has to worry about losing his job and his livelihood, and he was a wreck.
Yeah.
And it's still, when I sit down and talk to him, that you can tell he's just not the same from it. So I show that video, especially when I'm doing, speaking to chiefs or sheriffs, because I do think it has value of understanding that leadership matters from a human side as well. We all know the ways that it matters in getting the job done, running an organization and all of that, but also so much from how you treat your people and their own mental health. Not to go off too far of a tangent here, but so many agencies are focusing on wellness bureaus and, like mental health of their people and clinicians and all of that, which is great. It's great to have those resources and that conversation happening. But if you're not being the leader that you need to be, and know that you can have issues with a shooting or a critical incident and still approach it in a manner that doesn't completely destroy somebody. So, moral injury, and there is more research coming out on this, can have such an impact on how much PTSD affects, especially first responders. And I think if you're a first responder and you're listening to this, you can think of a dozen similar situations to the one we just talked about. And if it happened to you or somebody like that, just has such an impact. And we have seen in, when you were doing your early intervention, you can see the path of somebody's career, and you can see through the data how the PTSD affects their decision making and how they comport themselves, ultimately to where somebody ends up losing their job because nobody like stopped and intervened when they needed to.
Which is the point of early intervention.
Yes. Yeah. Not just to catch bad cops.
Well, and so let's talk a little bit about how PTSD kind of shows up for first responders.
Yeah, it's not like a light switch. And I can say from my own experience, it wasn't like, I responded to the 1 October incident and the next day I woke up and I was a hot mess. It really is just a slow burn of slow increases in irritability, and you're hypervigilant. Like, for me, I travel all the time. I'm in hotels all the time. Every once in a while I'll be in a hotel hallway, walking down the hallway, because that was what I was doing on 1 October, and my heart rate just shoots through the roof. And, sometimes I'm like, oh, that was weird. Now I have a better idea of what it was or what it is, but affecting like sleep problems. Listen, we all sleep terribly anyway. I mean, I worked graveyard for 17 of my 24 years. So it, I just developed terrible sleep patterns. However, it feels different. Like, and I think we're going to get into a little more how it's personally impacted me, but, nightmares are a big thing. And that is something that what happens is I'll have a nightmare and I'll shoot awake. It's been bad enough to where I woke up and threw up or didn't know where I was at. But it also, then I won't go back to sleep. And then I'll have trouble
because you don't
sleeping.
want to go back to sleep, because you don't want that to happen again, right?
Yeah, that, and my body is like, I just had a huge adrenaline dump.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, it's impossible. I have to get up and like go downstairs, watch something on TV or whatever to try and bring myself down. But then that disrupts your sleep pattern for me, at least the next couple of days. And I'm tired during the day, then I'm more irritable.
Can you explain what hypervigilance is for those that may not know what that is?
Yeah, it's So when you are involved in a critical incident, when you're out on the streets, when you're doing something dangerous, you have a little bit of adrenaline or a lot, and you're looking for threats everywhere you go. You're looking at people's hands and you're just expecting something bad to happen, because sometimes in law enforcement you have to, right? You have to be prepared for something bad to happen. Problem that creeps in with PTSD is that doesn't turn off. And then you're at the store and you're, all of a sudden up. Your blood is up, your blood pressure's up, you're looking for threats because that's how you've trained your body, or that's what PTSD has rewired your head to do. I know I had a friend that was in the military that said, yeah, I was driving down the road and a bag blew across the road and I like swerved thinking it was an ID or something like that. So it really is just your body being on when it shouldn't. And but again, how does that impact your relationships or your ability to communicate? Or, like it's almost like you just can get, especially when there's no outlet, you can get flooded with like emotions, right? Like, I'm on a call, I'm in a fight, I'm in a shooting. You have an outlet for those, that vigilance, that adrenaline. But when you're at home and it happens, it can really have serious impacts on how you communicate with people and how you interact with the people around you and the world around you.
Well, and I think it shows up as numbness too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or wanting to isolate or disconnect. I think that was a big one for you and I think honestly, like the people that we know that have PTSD, I think that is a common theme among them of this just there's no joy, there's not a lot of there's just existing, right?
Yeah, it's a defense mechanism almost.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel the bad, so I'm going to shut everything down. And, I say this all the time. The problem with that is it works.
Yeah.
But eventually you get to the point that you're shutting down the good. You get to the point where you're just really just like cruising, like, but not feeling anything, just existing.
Yeah. And I feel like that's probably the toughest place to be, because if you allow yourself to feel emotions, then you can feel some happy ones, but then you have to deal with all the really hard ones, right? And if you just exist, you kind of really don't really have to deal with anything.
Well, yeah. And there's also loneliness associated with it. Like, and it's so weird because I don't want to be around anybody. Like, I want to be numb, but I also don't want to be alone. So then it's like,
but then when you're being numb, people don't necessarily want to be around you.
For sure. And that's a strange like dichotomy in that moment is, I don't want, I feel lonely and that makes me sad, but I don't want to be around people and feel things and talk about things. So you're just in this weird like purgatory of like, it's just a weird experience. It's a weird way to interact with the world around you.
And I feel like the numbness, the avoidance, that makes things worse long term. Like you said, it works, but until it doesn't. And then it's coming out. It's almost like your body can't hold all of it in anymore, right? So it starts coming out in other ways, whether that's health issues, like you said, not being able to sleep, not being able to eat, being hypervigilant. Like your body is just like, I've held on to this. I have stuffed all this down. I've been numb. I can't do it for one more second.
Yeah. Or problematic behavior, addiction, because you're no longer able to push it down. So then you start like drinking to push it down. And because all of this is because you're not processing what you've been through. And the longer you go without doing it, the harder it gets.
Yes.
You can't heal trauma. You can't get rid of trauma. You experienced it, but you can process through it and you can become stronger. But the longer you wait, the more is in that basket to go through, untangle, pull out. Then you have years and years of trauma rather than doing the healthy thing and sitting down with a professional as it's unfolding. And again, that's just what makes it so much more difficult.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you feel like most first responders feel like they have PTSD to some degree? Do you think most of them avoid it or avoid having to deal with it? Do you think that's a common thread in law enforcement? And it's just, I know PTSD is talked about often, but do you think it's more of a thing where most first responders probably have some semblance of it? I don't know how you could not. And they just avoid talking about it because they feel like it would make them like they're weak.
Yeah, I think it's very complex and it can be very individualized depending on the person you're talking to. Do I think that anybody that wears a badge, carries a gun, and experiences these things over a extend like 20 years, 30 years, does their trauma affect them? Do they have some semblance of PTSD? Yes. I also believe that our knowledge and understanding of how that impacts first responders is going to evolve over the next 20 years because we're finally having the right conversation. So maybe we're trying to fit an impact of, this of how trauma impacts first responders into a definition we have that is more narrow, like PTSD. Like where, so yes, you have it or you don't. But in reality, it's more, I think, because PTSD originally was studied for like shell shock and after, combat and a deployment, it's very different than a 30-year career in law enforcement that's more cumulative in nature. So, I mean, my personal opinion, not a doctor, not a researcher, is our understanding of how this impacts humans that we're putting, as cops and firefighters and all that is going to evolve over the next 20 years because we're having the conversations. But I think everybody that does this job at some point, it's affecting them different levels depending on what they've experienced and what they've been through. And, you know, but I do think we're trying to fit that into this one box of PTSD. You have it, and now you need to be on medication and you're a hot mess and all whatever we're trying to fit into that box. But, and yeah, there's definitely denial there. I mean, I experienced it. No, I don't have PTSD. No. And
because what did that mean to you?
Well, yeah, it's like you're weak. I grew up watching Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, and that's why part of the reason I wanted to be a cop is Martin Riggs, like so that's not what you expect cops to be. So yeah, I don't want to have that because I'm not weak. I'm built different. Like I'm whatever it is. Like I'm these things don't affect me. I can go on 5 autopsies of children in a week and it just doesn't impact me. I'm stronger than that. And, obviously that's not true.
Do you think that's something that is singular to male first responders, or do you think female first responders have that same attitude? Do you think some of that is masculinity in there?
Yes and no. Do I think men in general are worse at identifying the emotions that they're feeling? Absolutely. I feel good or I feel bad. Whereas I think women are a little less likely to do that. Mm-hmm. However, I have seen plenty of female cops that are in just as much denial about that as male. Yeah. So, and they are having the same experience, 30 years of traumatic events. And so just because, I'm a woman and I'm in therapy or whatever, this isn't going to impact me as much. I no, it's going to have the same impact. And then I know male cops that are way in tune with that and in therapy and doing things the right way and healthy and all of that. And so it's just something that we need to be aware of on both sides.
So at what point do you, in your opinion, do you suggest people reach out for help?
Well, there's 2 parts to that answer. Where we should be and where we are now. Where we should be is you put a badge on your chest, you have a gun on your hip, you start seeing a professional to start developing the tools to process through as it's happening throughout your career. Just as important as a vest, just as important as extra magazines. That's where we should be. And that's where, because the most you're out, if you don't need it, is an hour a month, right? You're sitting down with a professional. But what you gain from that even if you don't understand it at that point in your life, because the first 5 years of being a cop, it was just fun. I saw this crazy stuff that happened and I was involved in it and telling my friends and all of that. And you don't realize the impact it has on you. You don't know. You don't see how fast the train's going until you get off of it, right?
See that in police misconduct. That's where misconduct really starts reaching, or it starts reaching a measurable level in some police officers, is that 5 to 7 year mark.
Yeah. Because things are starting to slow down. Things are starting to impact you. You maybe develop some moral injury along the way, and some of that bitterness can creep in. And so but where we should be is that where we are currently. Obviously, most agencies, most cops don't do that. They don't even call it therapy. Like, we're doing a mental health check-in once a year because, we don't say the T word. But I would say the best time to go to therapy is, 5 years ago. The second best time is now. But if it is impacting your life and as much denial as you want to be in, you have an idea that it is, right? You have this idea that it is, you're not sleeping, you're more irritable, you're numb, you feel like you're in that place that I described where, you want to isolate from everybody, but that you're also feeling lonely, or you're starting to have problematic coping methods. Like I'm drinking all the time, drinking by myself, because it helps me sleep, or quieting the noises. Then yeah, you need, those alarm bells are sounding, and you need to reach out, start with peer support if that's what you're comfortable with, getting into a professional and having those because there are things you can do no matter what point you are in this, I hate to say this, but this PTSD journey or for your mental health. No matter what point you're at, there are things that can help. And that's obviously, cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, going and sitting down with a therapist and talking through what you've been through. And then there's in reality, there are things that you can do, right? And, we talked about the best time to start therapy or start working on it is at the beginning of your career, or 5 years ago. The second best time is now. And there are things like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or talk therapy. You sit down and you talk through, what you've been through. You rewire problematic thinking patterns. They give you specific tools for you when you're feeling it in the moment. And then something that I started to do about like a year ago, maybe, in EMDR, and stands for eye movement desensitization. I mess that word up every time I say it. and reprocessing. And I'm not going to get into the technical side because, as I said earlier, we're not doctors, but it involves eye movement across the hemispheres of the brain, and you're basically retagging traumatic memories with peaceful feelings. That is
that is a very broad description.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Google it, put it into chat. You could probably get a better description of it. But I started it, literally you're sitting there in front of, a certified clinician that can do it, and they're moving, some of them have different ways to do it, but they're moving a finger back and forth in front of your face, and, having you talk about, like, put you in the place that, how you remember the traumatic experience, and then they equate it to a peaceful feeling, and it can take it out of you. For me, like, I tell you, there's times that I'm like exhausted after, very emotional. But what I noticed is, when I teach my class, there are times that I get emotional. It still happens far less since I've been doing EMDR. Like, it is a drastic change. And when I'm talking to groups of people where it's like, oh, this is not it's not impacting me as much. It's still there, but I can get through it. But that is my experience. I'm sure there are, professionals that can explain it way better than me.
So, and I think even if you aren't at the point where you feel like you can reach out for professional help, even reaching out to a friend and continually reaching out and talking about the way that you're feeling with the goal of eventually getting there. But I think both of us recognize it can be very difficult, especially when you're, like we talked about in a previous episode, when you're at your very lowest. It's really hard to then get yourself to the point where you're going to go get mental health help from a therapist, right? So even just starting small, talking with a friend about the symptoms you're experiencing, and they can help you get to a therapist. Hey man, let me look up some that, or I have one that I know somebody at work is going to. Let me get you their phone number. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I will say this. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching it and you're experiencing anything like what we've talked about, you can reach out to us, reach out to me, and go through our website.
People do it all the time.
All the time. And even not in Las Vegas, outside of where we're at. And I've helped people get the help that they need. So you can message me. My phone number's on the website, for crying out loud. Message through the website, whatever. If you're looking for help, I may not know, but I'll find out, because I have a lot of connections in this mental health wellness space specifically for law enforcement, but any first responder. Mm-hmm. And I mean that. I would rather you reach out than read about you in the paper.
Yes. Do people read the paper? How old are you?
Then read about you on MySpace. Sorry.
MySpace. Well, it's time for the portion of the program where we do salutes and salutations. Our salute today is for our friend who shall remain nameless, who was in the officer-involved shooting and moral injury thanks to his agency. And we love you and we care about you. Yep. And our salutation is for Curtis today, who hopped on LinkedIn. Let me tell you, Uvalde is a hot topic. Mm-hmm. So he hopped on one of Josh's thought leadership posts to tell him that he needed to go be proactive and do something about it instead of just writing about it. So our response to that was just the link to our website. So Curtis, if you're out there listening, thank you for giving us a shameless plug into our business, which that is all we do, is help first responders. And we are doing something about it. And our goal is to prevent active shooters, believe it or not. So hope you visited our website, Curtis, and I hope you are having the day that you deserve.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. If you like what we talk about, there's more in my book, The Courage to Live. It's available on Amazon. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with a friend. Appreciate you spending time with us today.